What is up, YouTube? My name is Eben, and today we are going to take a look at Parallel City, which is actually in many ways kind of like two cards in one, and you're probably familiar with it, but for those of you who don't know, this stadium is quite different from all others in that you can choose to play it this way, or you can choose to play it this way, and depending on which side is facing you, it has different effects. The city side, if you get it, this bottom half, the red half, it it basically makes it to where everybody kind of has grass, fire, or water resistance essentially because all their attacks are reduced by 20. And that's before normal weakness and resistance is applied as well, actually, which is kind of interesting. But because it's before weakness and resist, that means that if you're weak to something that's attacking you that happens to be grass, fire, or water, it's going to minus that 20 before it gets doubled up into 40, which is very good. That's good for you if you happen to be weak to them. And then this other side, the nature side, the blue side, if it's facing you, then you have to have a 3 Pokemon maximum bench size, sort of like an anti or a reverse Skyfield. And both of these sides can actually play pretty well toward you. For one thing, if you don't have any grass, fire, or water Pokemon in your deck, then you can always at least play this where this end is facing you and you don't have a drawback then essentially because it's not reducing damage from your Pokemon at all, and you can use this end to hamper any opponent in theory. But if you do have fire, water, grass Pokemon, you can still play this, but you're going to always want to face the blue end toward you. And the blue end might seem like it is just detrimental, always reducing bench size, but some decks can actually profit from this because not everybody needs a really full bench. So we're going to take a look at just what this card can do because while it looks very interesting, sometimes it can be a little challenging to think of what exactly it is good for. You can tell it's good for something, but you're not always real sure. I mean, first of all, any deck that relies on Pokemon of those three types can definitely be hampered by the city side, but especially Seismitoad EX. A water Pokemon who attacks and is known for his first attack is Quaking Punch, but it only does 30 damage. It's 50 with a Muscle Band. But if it's being hampered by 20 right there, that's 10 damage, 30 if it has a Muscle Band, which can slow Seismitoad down a lot. And part of what makes Seismitoad good is the fact that it slows you down. So by you slowing it back down with a card that also its Quaking Punch doesn't lock out, because this is a stadium card after all, so he doesn't prevent you from playing it, you can essentially even the playing field. You're going to be looking at maybe a slower game, but in a way that's kind of a good thing, because the last thing you want is to not be able to get everything together because Seismitoad manages to hold you down long enough that you can't win. So this buys you time against a slow deck, which can seem kind of counterintuitive, but basically what it is it basically means that they have to suffer the same kind of tempo problem that you do, and it levels the playing field very nicely. But there are other decks that also don't like that. For instance, decks that use the Eon evolutions have to be very careful because Flareon and Vaporeon can accidentally lock their Pokemon into all having minus 20 on all their attacks, which is quite beneficial, especially if they're trying to take advantage of type weakness. Now, Vaporeon doesn't get played a lot, but Flareon does because lots of people like to use Flareon so that they can benefit from Blacksmith. So they can actually be pretty decently hosed by the red side. And of course, naturally, the grass Pokemon who often goes with these, Vespiquen, needs every little bit of damage because while frequently Vespiquen hits very hard, and that's kind of its reputation, it's usually kind of a close race to see if it will actually one-hit KO an EX. And sometimes it can be a 10 or 20 point difference between getting that knockout or having to wait an additional turn and possibly suffering another knockout on their side. And it's a deck where that kind of tempo is, as I've played this deck a lot, I can tell you, that kind of tempo is super important because you're in a prize race with your opponent very much with this deck, as your Pokemon pretty much all get one-hit KO'd. So the last thing you want is minus 20 on your attacks, because that can often mean that a very bulky EX can actually live an extra turn against you and basically pick up 2 KOs, which is 2 prizes, for the one they're going to get. And if you're racing evenly with them, it means you can easily Lysander them for a Shaman or something like that for game later. So it's pretty damaging for Vespiquen, truth be told. Now, of course, we also have this end of the card to work with, and I think the blue end is probably the more interesting of the two. Like I say, it's kind of a reverse Skyfield. Skyfield gives you 8 slots on everybody's bench, whereas this limits one player to 3. So this card, you really only see it in decks that, like, say, Mega Rayquaza, the one that wants to hit you, the one that has the Delta evolution, so it can get up on the first turn. That Mega Rayquaza really, really needs Skyfield. And while replacing their Skyfield with your own Stadium and other decks can be kind of detrimental to them, they can make up those extra 3 slots on their bench when they play their next Skyfield, so they're not necessarily super crippled by it. But having to get rid of 5 Pokemon if you replace their Skyfield with the blue side of Parallel City is absolutely devastating. They tend to have a limited number of basic Pokemon, and while crushing out 3 of them might not be enough, taking down 5 is really, really punishing for them. It can be very difficult for them to come back. Not to mention there are other decks, too, that like to use a lot of their bench. Decks like Bronzong need heavy bench support, and there are also Pokemon like Zoroark, or in Modified, you also have to consider Keldeo, who occupy a lot of bench space and who you don't want to get rid of. Or decks like Gyarados that need lots of Magikarps on the bench and can be put into a very awkward situation if they have to choose which 3 Pokemon exist on their bench. Do they send a bunch of Magikarps away to have a backup attacker, or do they keep 3 Magikarps and nothing else, putting them in a potentially very dangerous position against you? You can make your opponent basically have to make very difficult decisions that are easy to make incorrectly because they don't have all the information. Of course, you can also take advantage of the blue side, because there are a number of Pokemon, Hoopa EX and Shaymin EX primarily, who get played to your bench, but then kind of sit there and are easy Lysander targets for an opponent and can actually be a great weakness for you to have hanging around. By playing the blue side of the stadium toward you, you can actually send your Shaymins and Hoopas down to the discard pile and not have to lose prizes when your opponent Lysanders them late in the game. Instead, you can just erase them. You can get all their benefits and suffer none of their drawbacks. So the blue side, while it might not easily be seen, can actually be very beneficial for you. And so, while thinking about building your decks, do take this stadium into consideration. If nothing else, it can be a nice neutral stadium if you don't have another stadium that is kind of an easy knee-jerk reaction choice. Like, obviously, if you're playing a fighting deck, you're going to want to run Fighting Stadium. But not every deck has a stadium that makes a lot of sense, but it's always good to run a stadium if for no other reason than to get rid of other stadiums. But when you've got one like this that has a lot of options for disruption, it's a very, very good choice. And Parallel City might just be the new neutral stadium that gets run. So anyway, until next time, like, comment, subscribe, check me out on Twitter. The link is below in the description, and I will see you next time.